Some say that peers make the place. What does that mean? Peers can be a bigger source of support, information, and friendship than our manager and other organizational employees. What else? We also tend to be more innovative when we engage with our peers and we generate more creative ideas. But what about when the relationship we share with them isn't quite as strong? Or maybe it's downright contentious. In this episode of The Communicative Leader, we're going to look at the important role that peer relationships play in our workplace experience. We're going to look at the benefits, potential challenges, and how to end a peer relationship if the need arises. Hello, and welcome to The Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Million-Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On The Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. Peers can make the workplace way better. From someone we can laugh with when that customer shows up again with the worst breath, to someone we can say, hey, I know we went over the instructions like 100 times, but can you please show me again how to do this? It's a lot easier than going to our manager to do so. It's this idea of social cost. It is far lower stakes to ask a peer for feedback or a reminder or instruction than it is to go to our manager. Well, why is that? Well, here's the thing. If we know we should know how to submit a certain type of report, for example, because our manager has shown us multiple times, well, it's not so much fun to go and ask them again to walk us through it. Also, we want to look good in the eyes of our manager. We want to be seen as competent and capable. And at the end of the day, my friends, our managers are typically the ones deciding on bonuses, performance increases, promotions, even just the day-to-day. What projects am I assigned to? How much latitude do I have in negotiating my role, in taking on more tasks I enjoy and shedding those that, well, I don't? Point being, it is in your best interest to be seen as engaged and high-performing in the eyes of your manager. So we know coworkers can help us by providing information, but they can also provide us support in terms of cheerleading when a presentation doesn't go as planned, or an ear to listen to when we need help thinking about ideas. Coworkers can also easily morph from peers who do similar work to people we call friends. Today, we're going to consider the impact of peer relationships in the workplace. We're going to touch on the benefits of these relationships. We're going to think about how to better develop and strengthen these associations. And again, my friends, if the need arises, we're going to talk about how to end that relationship with a coworker tactfully. So why do peer relationships matter in the workplace? I want you to think about your current workplace, or if you're not currently working, maybe the last one. What were or are the 3 to 5 things you enjoyed most about working in that group? Sure, you might think of a specific project you led or a certain task you enjoyed, but I'm sure a peer popped up as one of the top 5 best things that emerged from that role. One way the leadership literature thinks about peer relationships is through the lens of coworker exchange theory, or CWX. Fancy schmancy way of describing relationship that emerges between 2 peers who report to the same leader. So you're thinking, Dr. O, more theory. But do I ever let you down, my friends? So stick with me for a minute. Coworker exchange theory is really important because it helps us to better understand what it feels like for you to work in your work group. Yeah, right, you say. How is that possible? How can the various relationships I share with my peers tell you, Dr. O, about my experience at work? Well, those of you who have created high-quality relationships with your manager, mutual trust, respect, your manager can come to you with a directive and know you're going to get it done. Yeah, those of you who have that quality relationship with the leader, well, you're likely to develop strong relationships with peers who are also in the in-group with the leader. I don't use in-group here loosely or as slang. It is not the same as all the cool kids are doing it, but rather it is a technical term. In-group members tend to hang together. Have you heard the phrase, birds of a feather tend to stick together? Same idea applies here. So I want us to follow this thread a little bit further. You, my friend, have a great relationship with your manager. You trust her to make decisions that are best for the group. You feel like she takes your preferences into account when assigning projects. She frequently praises your contributions, and she should, because you, my friend, you work hard. You have established yourself as a trusted member of the team. You're an expert in your area. Now you're working really hard on a project. You're not quite sure where to go next. You have some ideas, but it'd be really helpful to have feedback, someone to bounce ideas off of. Who do you go to? Likely, you're going to go to someone else your manager trusts, counts on, and looks to as well. So why don't we go to the person that we can tell our manager just barely tolerates, or the person they downright demonstrate some form of contempt for? Yeah, I think we know those answers. Either they don't likely know because they weren't invited to the same meetings, or we don't have that type of relationship, or we're just going to come up to them and chat informally. Or we recognize that we might not necessarily want to be seen spending a lot of time with them. Why? We recognize, and again, sometimes this is just implicitly, that it would not necessarily be great to be seen with a lower status member. My listeners out there who are parents, all those times you told your kids, be mindful of who you're seen with, who they associate with, guilty by association, you were right. So we know that those who have a great relationship with the leader, our in-group members, are more likely to befriend other in-group members. Well, what does this mean? It means you have access to collectively more resources. Not only do you have your leader's ear or their mentoring and their support, but you have that from your peers who also have access to your leader's positive resources and discretion. In-group members tend to make more money, tend to be happier at work, enjoy working on more challenging and higher status projects, more positive exchanges and feedback from the manager. In-group members also have extra access to organizational and personal resources. We're thinking about professional development, mentoring, and role latitude. Okay, so we get it, right? It is important to establish a high-quality relationship with your manager, because not only does it impact important things like your earning potential, but in large ways, it also impacts who you're likely to befriend. But what does that mean then if we've gotten off on the wrong foot with our manager, or if no matter what we do, we still feel like they treat us poorly, dismissing our ideas, failing to provide required training? Or what if we're at a season in our life where what we're doing is required and no more, and therefore our manager doesn't see us as a team player? These things happen. But what does that mean if we're not in the in-group? Well, you're in the out-group. Yes, it's a real term, I promise you. I know it sounds incredibly juvenile. You're in the out-group, you're in the out-group. But my friends, I promise you, this is the official term we use to describe those who don't have a great relationship with the leader. This can range from average quality to one that is just destructive. While in-group members enjoy a number of benefits and privileges, well, it's not quite the same workspace for those in the out-group. These members not only don't necessarily have the ear of the leader, they're often assigned to less desirable projects, receive fewer raises, less likely to be able to make up some of those losses at the peer level because, well, whereas in-group members tend to connect with and cozy up with other in-group members, out-group members often find themselves in a position to connect with other out-group peers. The fact that research continues to show consistent links between the relationship you share with your leader and peer relationships, it reiterates the power communication plays in leadership and work group dynamics. There is no easier way to put it than relationships flourish or flounder as a result of these communication interactions. So now that we know why we're likely to connect with certain peers more easily or more often than others, now we can consider the impact of peer relationships. Peer relationships have been linked to many positive outcomes: job satisfaction, organizational commitment, communication satisfaction, decreases in feeling alienated. While the literature skews positive, there are some potential challenges or drawbacks associated with this relationship. such as emotional exhaustion. Maybe someone's asking too much of us. Before we dive into other potential challenges, I want to explore the many benefits. Part of the reason that peers are influential is because of the variety of needs they help meet and fulfill during the work hours. We are hardwired, my friends, to connect with others and develop relationships to fulfill our interpersonal needs. So what are some of the reasons we seek these relationships with peers? 1, work safety, someone we trust. It can also help us to fill the role of a friend when we're at work or even working from home, someone we connect with during the day. A sanity check, right? I love this one, saying, oh my goodness, am I crazy or what? Is this what I heard? Did I interpret this correctly? Because of work values or life interests that are similar. And proximity, right? Because they're there, because we spend so much time with them, because we spend so much time interacting with them. While these reasons speak to our belongingness needs, there are other reasons we might befriend others. And these can be professional reasons or strategic reasons. So validation and affirmation, someone to say, you're doing such a great job. Or yes, that's exactly how I would have done it. They can be great access to promotions and just higher social capital. Yeah, we're talking popularity and access here, my friends. So we know there are a variety of reasons why we develop workplace relationships with peers. So I want to dive into 3 specific ways that are going to help us to understand why we do this and the ways in which peers help to fulfill these needs. So I'm hoping these 3 ways are going to help to tie together the ideas that we've already talked about. The 1, emotional support, providing us friendship, they're active listeners, they're demonstrating empathy. 2, informational support. So someone we can seek advice from, we can ask them about their expertise or their know-how. And 3, instrumental support. So this is when we can count on someone for tangible help. So maybe they go to a meeting in our place because we have a conflict, or they offer to lead the setup or tear down of an event so we can focus on other aspects of the project. So now we have an understanding of the impact and role peer relationships play in the workplace. Now we can look at some additional benefits of peer relationships before, again, pivoting and looking at some of these potential challenges. Buckle up, my friends. This is a long list. There are a number of benefits of peer relationships. I really love this too because what we know from this area of study is that in many cases, peer relationships provide unique benefit and influence above that of the manager. Boom! These hallway conversations are important. The lunches, the coffee, the little instant messages and emails, all of this adds up to improve the work environment for you, but also in terms of other tangible outcomes and benefits. Peer relationships offer us help and information, which is instrumental in reducing our workplace burden. It helps us to complete our work and helps us to even better understand our role relative to others. Our colleagues inspire higher levels of organizational commitment and job satisfaction, and peers even help us feel more engaged in our roles, again, above and beyond what our manager could do on their own. When we have solid relationships with our peers, we tend to be better organizational citizens. Yes, we tend to help others. And an outcome from a study I worked on with Crystal Ackerman, peers offer unique sources of additional creativity and innovation, again, influence beyond what a manager can inspire on their own. Considering the overwhelmingly positive outcomes associated with supportive peer relationships, it is of little surprise that some have suggested peer relationships might have the most substantial effect of all workplace relationships. Why has it been suggested that peer relationships are most crucial? Again, peers tend to be seen as more accessible, more approachable than leaders. Peers can help provide unique feedback and insight that might be unparalleled support or motivation that employees might not feel from their interactions with the leader. These findings don't take away from the leader's role. I'm not trying to do that. But rather, because of the multiple role demands and status distinction, Peers are better aligned to form friendships and likely have more time to engage in discussion and ideation than leader-member dyads do. So our peer relationships, they act as buffers against stress by providing support and additional sources of information and resources. Employees, we also need to consider potential challenges in or because of peer relationships. All right, potential challenges. If I were in your seat, I'd be shaking my head a bit and saying, you just spent all that breath telling me about the importance of and the benefits of making friends with my peers. And now you're telling me there might be some challenges? You tell me I might need to end one or more of these relationships? I get it. This is a challenging thing to think about and even more challenging to do. But we've been or had an encounter or numerous with a peer that didn't go as planned, or very, very technically speaking here, left us feeling yucky. Again, only the highbrow, academic stuff here only, folks. So what are some of the reasons we might not connect with our peers? Ages and stages. We've talked about the challenges of forging connections across generational differences or different seasons in our career, our life stages in previous episodes. I think it's important to start with the fact that, again, research continues to show us that employees across generations, whether it's the boomers, Gen Y, Gen Z, they are more similar than they are different. Biggest difference that researchers have found, career advancement tends to be more strongly valued by members of Gen Y in contrast to the boomers and Gen X. Some differences were also found among these generational cohorts when it came to items related to diversity, climate, and immediate recognition and feedback. As we discussed in the episode about when good people are bad leaders, career stage is often wrongly reduced to someone's age. That is, people take shortcuts based on someone's appearance and either prescribe them with more experience and expertise or less. Though, as a newbie, it may be hard to connect with someone in the sage level, someone who's been at the organization 11 or more years. It might be easier to connect with someone who's a straddler, just ahead of us with 4 to 7 years of experience. Sages may find it easier to brainstorm with those who hire just after them, seasoned employees, those with 8 to 10 years of experience. It's also important we think about life stages. I was reflecting on this the other day. I was in a video meeting with a number of colleagues across the discipline, different life stages, yet working together on a committee. In talking about our upcoming conference, we laughed because it became pretty clear who was in what life stage. Those who had researched the nightlife and reserved tables and had a plan tended to be either those who did not have children or whose children were grown. Those who mentioned looking forward to a leisurely meal and a quiet night and a good night's sleep tended to be those in a season with small children at home. If we're spending our time with one group and not the other, it can be hard to develop strong relationships. But again, focusing on our shared task, these collective responsibilities, those are the things that help to connect across the differences. One more thing that may impede our ability to develop thoughtful, strong relationships with peers, a competitive environment. When peers have to or feel as though they have to compete against each other, whether it's for customers, a client base, those aren't necessarily the conditions most conducive to sharing information or building trust. This becomes even harder if our livelihood, our paycheck, for example, or our bonus is tied to the sheer number of contracts or dollars or customers we bring in individually. This model varies across industries, but it's the norm for those working in real estate, mental health, financial planning, and fitness. We could do a whole episode on this type of work environment, but consider how to highlight each employee's individual expertise. Taking time to learn about and celebrate each other's strengths can increase member knowledge, but create an environment where we get to know each other and we celebrate each other. Now that we know the benefits of peer relationships and we've explored some of the potential challenges of connecting with those in our work group, I want us to consider how to better develop these relationships and how to disband them as well. I'm going to start relationship development since that's the natural first step. Patty Sias, a communication scholar, she and her colleagues have worked on coworker relationships for years and has done really great work. But Sias and Cahill found 3 distinct transitions in terms of workplace peer relationships. Right? Acquaintance to friend. So we have broad communication and we communicate because we work together. We might begin to bond over these organizational experiences, and we might start to spend time together outside of work. Second stage, friend to close friend. So this transition involves communication exchanges centered on getting to know each other, on seeking affirmation and advice. This can not just be professional advice, but maybe we're asking them about our personal life as well. Communication is moved from general and superficial to more intimate and less cautious conversations. Final transition, close friend to bestie. Of course, they didn't say bestie, they said almost best friend, but again, only the highbrow. In this scenario, coworkers play integral roles in each other's lives, professionally and most importantly, personally. And these relationships are built on a long-term foundation of mutual trust and respect. So this research helps us to show how work group peers, we can move from acquaintances to truly trusted confidence. So the takeaway is that relationship development takes time. It is advised and expected you start cautiously in terms of self-disclosure. As the other begins to reciprocate and sharing information about themselves, you begin to disclose more as you feel comfortable, and the relationship begins to develop further. So what happens if your coworker is unresponsive or doesn't disclose in turn? Well, spoiler alert, my friends, this is a signal that they're not ready or willing to move beyond the acquaintance phase. Below, we're going to discuss some of the steps for enhancing peer relationships and some indicators that a peer relationship is ending or being renegotiated. So Patty Sias and her colleagues have found 5 primary reasons workplace relationships deteriorate. 1, distracting life events. We were just talking about life stages, right? 2, conflicting expectations. I expect more, or you expect more from me. 3, promotion. We're just not in that work group, or we've been promoted to a managerial role. 4, betrayal. Ooh, that's a hard one. And 5, personality. This aligns with some contemporary research that shows that peer relationships can just lead to emotional exhaustion. Peer relationships declined if they resulted in turnover, or they interfered with our ability to complete our jobs, or again, just added more emotional stress to our plate. This makes sense, right? When we're already overloaded with our own work-related responsibilities, no, I am sorry, I cannot help you think through the response to that text message, or what to name your dog, or what to make for dinner. While strengthening relationships involves sharing in greater depth and frequency, renegotiating relationships consists of, well, pretty much the opposite. As a relationship begins to dissolve, parties tend to move from intimate core topics to more general and superficial. Through in-depth interviews, Sias revealed specific communication maneuvers that employees reported engaging in when they're trying to renegotiate or end workplace relationships. Again, we're not going scorched earth here, my friends. We are not doing that. We are being tactful. We are being mindful of the fact that most likely we're going to continue to see each other and have to interact professionally indefinitely. But most of these communication strategies were very indirect. Instead of having a direct conversation that could result in saying things that we didn't mean or reactive language, we tend to avoid talking about non-work matters, right? So we try to keep everything professional. And we tend to add additional distance between us and this other by turning down anything that doesn't relate to work. So whether it is spending time together, grabbing a coffee while at work or lunch, or it's something that's happening outside of work hours, by declining those invitations and again, sticking to professional only work-related communication, this is how we tend to indicate to others that we're not interested in being a close friend anymore, but rather renegotiating to a workplace colleague or an acquaintance. But don't worry, friends, I'm not going to leave us here. The relationship ends, goodbye. Nah, that's not my style. Instead, we're going to leave you with some other oriented communication behaviors that can help you to develop these strong relationships with your peers that are going to make your work life easier, but also better, more enriched. Well, we're thinking about these strategies. They can be adapted for use with our manager, with mentees, with romantic partners, with your mail carrier, your dentist, right? You get the point. These are just good communication strategies. I want you to think about acknowledging the other's expertise. Look to them for advice, for role modeling. In a previous episode, we talked about this policy of seeing something positive and saying it. So name what you see they're doing and acknowledge that strength. When we see our peer doing something really well, call it out, raise it up, bring attention to it. I want you to also think about how to demonstrate respect for others' time. One of the primary reasons workplace relationships deteriorate is because one party feels that there is too large a strain on their time. This can be as simple as asking your peer, are you comfortable with informal drop-ins? Can I just give you a Teams call or swing by your office? Or is it better for you if I schedule time formally? This also means that we're mindful of their work demands and respect their wishes to complete work well at work, right? In place of maybe chatting with them when we can tell they're trying to get work done. Third tip, transparency, transparency, transparency. Maybe that meeting your peer led was a disaster. I'm telling you. But telling them they did phenomenally when it was clear that's not the case, that's not helpful. I also don't advise telling them that was a dumpster fire, right? So many technical terms today on the communicative leader. Point here, in close relationships, in relationships where we both have trust, we expect honesty, even if the content isn't awesome. What's worse than bombing that presentation in a meeting? Having a friend feed you information that you just know isn't true. I also want you to think about intentional language while at work. Again, we've talked about this, but also on social media. Commit to being tactful with your language. Now, it might feel good, like really good, to rant about another peer or the CEO. It is not necessarily workplace compliant, and it might put your peer in a bad spot. What if they don't agree with you? What if they actually like the CEO's new initiative? And then when we use social media to address these concerns or frustrations, we're airing our work group's dirty laundry publicly. Again, there may be a lot of immediate satisfaction with this. Is this a way a leader carries themselves, presents themselves? Nope. And you, my friend, you're a leader. The last tip, take responsibility. We all misspeak. We've all reacted before we had a chance to really think it through before. In these instances, just own it. Acknowledge it, apologize for it, and take steps to remedy it. I want to share a story that I had an experience with this a few years ago. I used to begin classes by saying something to the effect of, hey guys, let's get started. I thought nothing of it. And then one day a student came up to me and he said, hey, I'm really proud of you for not using gendered language today. And I said, what do you mean? He said, instead of saying, hey guys, let's get started, you said something like, okay, everyone, or okay, folks. I don't remember the exact language I used. I wish I could say that it was intentional, but it was not. But honestly, I hadn't thought about it before in terms of hi guys or okay guys. So I thanked him for taking the time to bring this to my attention, to chat with me about it. The next time I saw that class, we started with a quick comment about realizing that I had used gendered language for like ever in that regard, and now was consciously working on it. So per the usual, we've done a lot today on the communicative leader. So let's think about some takeaways. All employees, all ranks, all industries, take a moment to think about your peer relationships. Think about how much they add, hopefully, to your day-to-day work experience. Think about being the type of colleague you'd like to have. If you are listening to that sentence and thinking, that just doesn't represent my experience, Well, maybe now you have some ideas of how to develop a relationship if you're interested, or how to end any relationships as well. Managers, this one is really important and it can feel a bit counterintuitive, but creating spaces for your team to chat and connect is essential. Yes, I want you to join in here on the occasion, but really allow time for your team to get to know each other. These are not idle water cooler conversations. It is a building block of a trusting relationship, can lead to higher levels of satisfaction, commitment, creativity, and innovation. On the next episode of The Communicative Leader, we're going to unpack what a learning culture is and talk about how you can foster one. All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on The Communicative Leader.